Welcome to the Aegis Interactive and Business Mobility Asia Covid-19 Business and Investigations 3-minute update for the 3rd of November 2020. This week we are looking at Malaysia. So first up, Malaysia is closed to travellers and foreigners until at least December 31st, 2020. Currently, Malaysia has more than 32,000 cases since January, but only 250 deaths in total, which reflects the very good medical facilities that they have there in Malaysia. After about 5 months of managing the COVID virus quite well, there's been a surge of new cases since the 2nd of October, when they're now averaging 1,000 new cases per day. Fortunately, the mortality rate remains low. Masks are now mandatory across all of Malaysia in public, and particularly on public transport. There is some inconsistency in how the virus is being managed. Last week, the government issued a new CMCO, Conditional Movement Control Order, but things are not always as they seem. Here is an update from one of our friends in KL, Nigel. He says there are lots of restrictions, but we can still go out to eat and drink. We can go out to shop for essentials, but we're advised not to. But if we do, all the shops and shopping centres are closed anyway. Outside exercise is discouraged, yet gyms and exercise classes are still open. Permission and evidence of your work is required if you want to leave the city or cross any state borders. Every state indeed has its own rules. Every building is also setting its own rules. Police enforcement of the rules is inconsistent, hardly surprising. There may or may not be restrictions on how many people from one household can go shopping. There may or may not be restrictions on social gatherings in your homes. There may or may not be restrictions on places of worship. So things are not clear at all. In terms of entering Malaysia, as I mentioned before, Malaysia is closed to almost all travellers until 31st of December, with exceptions being citizens, permanent residents, and with their My Second Home visa. It seems as though anyone entering Malaysia now has to serve 14 days quarantine in a government-nominated facility, but there is some conjecture on that. There's also a reciprocal green lane, RGL, between Singapore and Malaysia for business entry with a limit of 14 days at a time. No quarantine is required for holders of the RGL My Travel Pass, but voluntary isolation is required until test results are received same day, next day. Citizens also need permission to leave Malaysia now. In terms of investigations during the first lockdown, it was quite complicated. All offices and government offices were mostly closed, so it was complicated to get any investigation work done at that time. Under the CMCO, it's a little bit easier, but people are not moving around much, so that things like surveillance may not be very effective. We have been performing with good success, standard due diligence and background investigations, because most government sources are available online, and we've been able to connect with people virtually. And for our local agents, they've been able to go and visit with people. Other investigations that have been done successfully during the COVID period in Malaysia include fraud and corruption investigations, surveillance I mentioned before. The RGL is an opportunity for us to enter Malaysia for on-the-ground work if it's needed, and quarantine is only required if we test positive for COVID. So thanks this week go to our good friends in KL, Gary, Richard, Ardy, and indeed Nigel, for their assistance with the data and the colour information. Next week we'll be looking at Thailand, which has also been a success story. Up-to-date information can be found on our dedicated website, businessmobilityasia.com, our normal website, aegisinteractiveasia.com, and also on LinkedIn channel, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands. See you next week.